Reading through the Bible in a year, February 8th, Genesis 41, Mark chapter 11, Job chapter 7, and Romans chapter 11. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile, when, out of the river, there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I'm reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream in the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was hanged. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph. He was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothing, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one could interpret it. But I have heard it said that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." "I cannot do it," Joseph replied to Pharaoh. "But God will give the Pharaoh the answer he desires." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "In my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile, when out of the river they came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows came up, scrawny and very ugly and lean, and I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after they ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before. Then I woke up. In my dreams, I also saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but no one could explain it to me." Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 cows are good years, and the 7 heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them, and then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe." The reason that the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly declared by God. And God will do it soon. And now, let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked him, "Can we find anyone like this man, in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace. and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger, and dressed him in robes of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in a chariot as his second in command. And men shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but without your word no one will lift his hand or foot in all Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphanath-Paneah, and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During these 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city he put food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh, and said, "It is because God has made me forget all my troubles and all my father's household." Manasseh meaning, or likely meaning, you gonna tell me? There we go. It sounds like, and maybe derived from, the Hebrew for forget. The second son he named Ephraim, and said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." Ephraim meaning, I believe, fruitful? Yep, twice fruitful. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was no food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you." When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all the countries came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe in all the world. Mark chapter 11. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage and Bethany, at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you. Go to the village ahead of you. And just as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you doing this?' tell him, 'The Lord needs it, and will send it back here shortly.'" They went and found a colt outside in the street, tied at a doorway. As they untied it, some of the people standing there asked, "What are you doing, untying that colt?" They answered, as Jesus had told them to, and the people let them go. When they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks over it, he sat on it. Many people spread their cloaks on the road, while others spread branches that they had cut in the fields. And those who went ahead and those who followed shouted, "Hosanna," which means "Save us now," or "Lord, save us." "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest." Jesus entered Jerusalem and went to the temple. And he looked around at everything, but since it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree and leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. And he said to the tree, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard him say it. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple area and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught them, he said, "Is it not written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer for the nations'? But you have made it a den of robbers." The chief priests and teachers of the law heard this and began looking for a way to kill him, for they feared him, because the whole crowd was amazed at his teaching. When evening came, they went out of the city. In the morning, as they went along, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots. Peter remembered and said to Jesus, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed has withered." "Have faith in God," Jesus answered. "I tell you the truth. If anyone says to this mountain, 'Go throw yourself into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will happen, it will be done for him. I tell you, therefore, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. And when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive him, so that your Father in heaven may forgive you your sins." They arrived again in Jerusalem, and while Jesus was walking in the temple courts, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders came to him. "By what authority are you doing these things?" they asked. "And who gave you the authority to do this?" Jesus replied, "I will ask you one question. Answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I am doing these things. John's baptism, was it from heaven or from men? Tell me." They discussed it amongst themselves and said, "If we say from heaven, he will ask, 'Well, then why didn't you believe him?' But if we say from men," well, they feared the people, for everyone held that John was really a prophet. So they answered Jesus, "We don't know." And Jesus said, "Well, neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things." Job chapter 7. Job continues, "Does not man have hard service on earth? Are not his days like those of a hired man, like a slave longing for the evening shadows, or a hired man waiting eagerly for his wages? So I have been allotted months of futility, and nights of misery have been assigned to me. When I lie down, I think, how long until I get up? The night drags on, and I toss until dawn. My body is clothed with worms and scabs. My skin is broken and festering. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle. They come to an end without hope. Remember, O God, that my life is but a breath. My eyes will never see happiness again. The eye that now sees me will see me no longer. You will look for me, but I will be no more. As a cloud vanishes and is gone, so he who goes down to the grave does not return. He will never come to his house again. His place will know him no more. Therefore, I will not keep silent. I will speak out in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. Am I the sea or the monster of the deep that you put me under guard? When I think my bed will comfort me, and my couch will ease my complaint, then you frighten me with dreams and terrify me with visions, so that I prefer strangling and death rather than this body of mine. I despise my life. I would not live forever. Let me alone. My days have no meaning. What is man that you make so much of him, that you give him so much attention, that you examine him every morning and test him every moment? Will you never look away from me, or let me alone even for an instant? If I have sinned, what have I done to you, O watcher of men? Have you made me your target? Have I become a burden to you? Why do you not pardon my offenses and forgive my sins? For I will soon lie down in the dust. You will search for me, but I will be no more." So again, he's just lamenting the fact that he's alive. He's asking God, please just finish the work and kill me. Paul now continues, "I ask then, did God reject his people?" Remember, this is after 2 chapters of him lamenting the fact that the Jews have rejected God. Now he's asking the opposite question. Did God reject his people? By no means. I am an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin. God did not reject his people, whom he foreknew, those of the elect. Don't you know what the scripture says in the passage about Elijah, how he appealed to God against Israel? Lord, they have killed your prophets and torn down your altars, and I am the only one left, and they are trying to kill me. Certainly he must have thought this on his own about who he was himself. In the same way that we look at the news and we see all sorts of struggles happening in the world, it breaks our heart. We see how many people are clamoring for more and more and more abortion. They're trying to find more ways to violently oppose those in the church. There's people now storming into churches and attacking people who are just worshiping God. We've had people storm into churches and shoot people. We see these things, and it breaks our heart. And the only thing we can think is, I've lived it multiple times in very, we'll call them progressive cities, just because that's where the work is. So that's where I've been. And I've worked for companies that celebrated how high they were ranked in Out magazine of the most gay-friendly companies. And these are the places where God had me doing work. There were some people I reached with the gospel, certainly. But it was a hard row to hoe. In fact, I will almost guarantee you I've been passed over for promotion multiple times because of my Christian witness. And I know that when I was finally released from one of those companies, there were people celebrating that I was gone. It makes you feel like sometimes it would be nice to just go and live on an island with all Christians. You know? The only solace you have is in your home when you're praying together with your family or reading the Bible. This is where it feels safe. Or in your church. Again, I continually bring up the fact that the church is a field hospital for those who are beaten and battered from engaging with the world and from warring within themselves over their own desires to sin. And it's so hard sometimes to look out at the world and think that there's any good that can come of it. Again, I have a lot of friends who are post-mill who believe that the world's just getting better, and every day, the world is closer to everybody just accepting Jesus, and it's all going to be, sunshine and rainbows any minute now. Any minute now. I'm a student of Scripture. I've read through the Bible over and over and over again. Things don't just magically get better. It takes the work of God to make that happen. And how is it that God has shown that these things are going to happen? He shows that it gets progressively worse. So there's no way out. And then God steps in. We're going to read later about the story of Gideon. How he rescued the people under Gideon's care with 300 men, and not one of them had a sword in their hand. It's an impossible story if you think about it, but it's all God's doing. This is how God comes out and just destroys the wickedness in the area, in the land, and in the world. He waits until it's so dark so that only he gets the glory. Our hearts are broken. With Elijah, we're like, there's no one left who is a Christian. We see on the news all of these people who are falling all over themselves. Christian people who we have thought have been Christians for a long time. They've written Christian books. They've been pastors for years. We thought that they were strong strong Christian leaders, only to see them fall to adultery, them celebrate people who hate God, telling people that you can come into the church and be just as you always have been. Is that the story we read in the Bible? No. What do we see? We see people coming to Christ and being converted. The person that they were slowly fades away. In some cases, it's quick. And in place of that is now a new person, one who loves God, one who seeks after God, one who doesn't want to chase after the things that they used to do. We have so many pastors who are just out there right now telling people lies. It's heartbreaking to see. Sometimes it's so hard. It's so hard to see the light. Just that's just the fact of the way things are. But we know that our Redeemer lives. We know that he's out there because we have him in our hearts and in our minds. We know that we have been converted. And if God can convert even me, he can convert you, he can convert other people as well. Eventually there will come a time. God the Father will say, enough. And he will send his Son with this threshing sledge in his hand. And he will sweep the threshing floors. He will come for his elect. We know this because all of the promises that he's given us thus far have all been true and they've all been confirmed. This is our hope. For those of us who won't survive, who will die and pass through that veil of death into eternity, we'll be with Christ forever. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. But for those who are alive in that time, they're going to see a darkness that we can't even imagine until Jesus comes. Coming on clouds with great glory. So we, along with Elijah, we know this pain, we know this struggle. We've seen our loved ones that we care for continually reject God until they die. We've seen friends and family. Some get cancer, some die in horrific ways. All of these are just a result of the curse itself. As the whole world groans together, waiting for the consummation of Christ. So we agree with Elijah here. And here Elijah calls out saying, Lord, they have killed your prophets. They have torn down your altars. And I am the only one left. He knows of no one else who seeks after God. He's calling out to God, they are trying to kill me. And what does God answer him? Verse 4, I have reserved for myself 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. God is sovereign in his election. God is sovereign in the ability to keep those who are his safe. And who is he saying this to? This is the people of Israel. The vast majority of the people, of the entire population, had so rejected God and accepted Baal worship. These are descendants of Abraham. Genetic descendants of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. The direct descendants of Israel. The direct descendants of those who left Egypt with Moses, crossed through the Red Sea on dry land, heard God speaking to them at Mount Sinai, who lived under the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud, who had the Shekinah glory of God ever present with them, who were fed every single day by the hand of God with manna on the ground and with water that came from rocks. The whole time they were in that wilderness, their shoes never wore out, their clothing never wore out. And he sustained them the whole time. Then he brought them into the promised land, and he fought the battles for them to give them that promised land. And it's these same people who have now rejected their God and King. But God has preserved 7,000 for himself. The remnant that he has elected for salvation, he has chosen for himself. When it says 7,000, it sounds like, oh, it's actually, there's not 6,999, there's not 7,001, it's only 7,000. No. Is this an actual number? Maybe, maybe not. The number 7 is a very symbolic, and I'm not going to go into numerology and all of those things, but the number 7 within the Bible, it's the number of perfection. The number very often associated with God. And the number 1,000, it literally just means a large number. Hear me out. We'll later read in the Psalms that God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Are you telling me that there's only 1,000 very specific hills in the entire world? Or there's a few cows here and there, that those are the only cows that God owns? Is only that 1,000? Only the cattle on those 1,000 hills? No, he owns all the land and all the cattle. He owns everything in the universe because he created it for his glory. So when it says 7,000, that doesn't literally mean just 7,000 people. It means God has a perfect number of his elect that he is maintaining. Verse 5, Paul continues, so too at the present time there is a remnant chosen by grace. He's saying, even though all of Israel appears to be rejecting the salvation through the Messiah that Yahweh, the God of the Jews, has presented, God has still been saving his people as he did from the beginning. Chosen by grace. We talked about this as we went through Romans chapter 9. Verse 6, and if by grace, then it is no longer by works. If it were, grace would no longer be grace. Well, what then? What Israel sought so earnestly, it did not obtain, but the elect did. The others were hardened. As it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor. Eyes so that they could not see, and ears so that they could not hear, to this very day. And David said, may their table become a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a retribution for them. May their eyes be darkened so that they cannot see, and their backs be bent forever. Again, I ask, did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery? He's asking here, is this so bad that every Jew, well, are we, the few Jews who are being converted, the last Jews who will ever seek after God? He says, not at all. Rather, because of their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. Their God has turned to those who they themselves have rejected. But if their transgression means riches for the world, their loss means riches for their Gentiles, how much greater riches will their fullness bring? This is not, and I have a lot of dispensational friends who take this to mean that God has some secret plan for salvation to the Jews. They may curse Jesus until the day they die. They may go to the grave with their hands just taut in fists, screaming how much they hate Jesus, but they're going to get to heaven because God has a secret plan for the Jews. How does that make sense in all of this? It doesn't. It clearly can't. You only have this life on earth. And then you step into eternity. After death comes judgment. There's no second chance. So what does this mean then? He's talking about when God, and we're going to get to this as we read through the text, when God eventually removes the veil from their eyes, removes the cover on their hearts and minds so that they can see Jesus as the Christ of God. Then those Jews who hated God will see that Jesus is the Christ, just as all the Gentiles and a fair number of Jews who have been converted, just as they also have been converted. There's no second path of salvation. Continue on, verse 13, I am talking to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am an apostle to the Gentiles. I make much of my ministry in the hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and save some of them, a remnant. For if their rejection is the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? If the part of the dough offered as first fruits is holy, then the whole batch is holy. If the root is holy, so are the branches. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, do not boast over the branches, as in those who have been kicked out, or those who are currently in it. If you do, consider this, you do not support the root, but the root supports you. Jews have been historically the ones through whom God has done most of his work in the world. God has shown himself in his love for the Jewish people. But not all Israel is Israel. We've talked about that before. He has still always only ever been after the elect. Draken? Verse 19, you will say then, branches are broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted, yes, but they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but be afraid. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. Consider therefore the kindness and sternness or severity of God, sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Don't look at this and say, those dumb Jews. I'm so glad that they're not going to be in heaven with me. You make it about yourself. In the same way that the Jews thought it was simply because of their genetic link to Abraham that they could live their lives however they wanted, so long as they went to temple 3 times a year and just did their thing, whatever. They could go and live their lives however they wanted, serve Baal, serve Marduk, serve Chemosh, serve all of these other gods in their spare time, but, still, big ups to the man upstairs, right? And expecting that they would still be saved by their God. Those of the elect, God changes their hearts and minds to seek after him. In the Old Testament, they were looking forward to the Mashiach who was to come, the Messiah who was to come, the son of David. And we In the age of the church, have already had the Christ come and die for us on our behalf, and now we live our life to his example, trusting in the God who died for us, knowing that he will come again and that he will take us to be where he is. It's the same story, two sides of the same coin, one before he comes and one after he comes. It's always about faith, and it has always been about faith. And if they do not persist in unbelief, if God so chooses to bring about the transformation in heart for the majority of the Jews that exist in the world, because he can, he has the authority to do so, they will be grafted back in. For God is able to graft them in again. After all, if you were cut out of an olive tree that is wild by nature, and contrary to nature were grafted into this cultivated olive tree, how much more readily will these, the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? I don't want you to be ignorant of this mystery. And for the most part, when Paul talks about mystery, he's talking about the fact that both Jews and Gentiles are saved by the same God. He expands on it here. I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers, so that you may not be conceited. Don't look at Jews and get angry with them or mock them for their lack of faith, because you too lacked faith before God saved you. So what's to stop God from saving them just as well as he saved you? I talk about this quite a bit. My wife, at one of the churches we went to, was with the women's group, and I forget who the serial killer was. My brain wants to say Jeffrey Dahmer, but it might have been somebody else. Who, shortly before he was rightly killed for the horrible acts that he committed, he had some sort of Christian conversion. And the reports coming out were that it was not a fake conversion. It wasn't a deathbed conversion where somebody's trying to sneak in right underneath. There was genuine repentance. There was genuine fruit. There was genuine conversion happening in this person. And the women at this conference were angrily saying, "Not my God. He would never let that horrible person in here." I'm sorry, do you not understand the condition of your own heart? You don't deserve salvation. You're not a good person that God finally said, you know what? Heaven's going to be a much brighter place now because I got Peggy Sue coming in. I've got Frank McGillicuddy. Man, everybody loves that guy. Come on in, buddy. You know, he takes care of homeless people. He always has a crisp 20 in his pocket to hand out to kids who are walking around just in case they might need it for something fun. Nobody deserves salvation. Nobody. Not me, not you, not the Pope, not Mary. Nobody. As we read in Romans chapter 3, all have fallen short of the glory of God. There is no one who seeks after God. I think it's Romans 3, verse 8 through 20, I believe. It's verse after verse after verse after verse after verse from the Old Testament that all sing together the same story, that no one deserves salvation. that there is no one good in the eyes of God. Nobody can point their fingers at someone and say, God has no right or authority to save that person, and still celebrate the fact that he saved you. To be entirely honest, I hope that people like Adolf Hitler were actually converted before their death, so that we can join with him in celebrating the God who saves us. There is no one on this entire planet who deserves to go to heaven. And there's no one on this planet that God cannot save. So there's no reason to point at Jews or Muslims or anybody else, or even those dark, mean, liberals or whatever, dark-minded, what have you. Not trans people, not pedophiles. God can save anybody. And if he saved you, then that's proof of that. We have no right or reason to become conceited in our Christian identity. He continues, Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. This is a choice by God. He has chosen to do this. And so all Israel will be saved. Now, this is a part people get really hung up on. I'm going to read the note on this because it gets real weird. This is another one of those parts where I have dispensational friends who tell me, well, this means that every Jew, every single person who is of the genetic lineage of Abraham is going to be converted. God will reach into those people who have been dead for thousands of years, and he will save every one of those people. As long as they're from the genetic lineage of Abraham, all Israel will be saved. Is that what it says? From the Reformation Study Bible here. A critical expression at this point in Paul's argument, and one whose meaning is much debated. It could mean all spiritual Israel. Certainly. Remember from Romans chapter 9, not all Israel is Israel, right? That is, all the elect persons, both Jew and Gentile. Alternatively, it could mean all Israel in the sense of the remnant of all Jews destined to be saved throughout history. Or, as also noted above, it may point to a time when a mass conversion of ethnic Jews to Christ will occur. My view that at some point in the future, we're going to see a massive conversion of Jews. Not all of them, certainly, but a lot of them. The use of the term Israel to refer to a biological descendant of the patriarchs through Paul's discussion favors one of the last two interpretations. The exegesis of all Israel will depend on the interpretation and weighing of other factors in the passage. As it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion, and he will turn godlessness away from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. As far as the gospel is concerned, they are enemies on your account, but as far as election is concerned, they are loved on account of the patriarchs. For God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. Just as you, who were at one time disobedient to God, have now received mercy as a result of their disobedience. He's speaking now to Gentiles. So they too have now become disobedient in order that they too may now receive mercy as a result. Text just moved on, I can't find it. All right, sorry, I'm back in verse 30. Just as you, who were at one time disobedient to God, have now received mercy as a result of their disobedience. So they too have now become disobedient in order that they too may now receive mercy as a result of God's mercy on you. For God has bound all men over to disobedience so that he may have mercy on them all. Here he concludes the doctrinal section of the text. This isn't to say that there isn't doctrine coming in the future. There is, but this is where the text itself kind of is broken into its two different pieces. You have the first part, chapters 1 through 11, that are the background and history of why Christianity. And then the second part, chapters 12 through 16, we go into the orthopraxy. The first one is the orthodoxy. Second is the orthopraxy. That's the practical application of how to live a life as a Christian. The first section is, what does it mean to be a Christian? The second half is, what does it mean to live as a Christian? Smack dab in the middle is this little 4-verse doxology. The celebration of the work that God has done to bring salvation to a people, any people. Verse 33, oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable his judgments, and his paths beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord? Who has been his counselor? Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. That's it. That's all the reading and all of the notes for today. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Behold, the word of the Lord.